Hey guys, Will Terry here, and in this video I'm going to talk about writing a good story from your life experiences. This video is going to be part of a playlist. It's called How to Invent a Money-Making Art Project, and I believe this is video number 4 in that series. So if you want to know what I'm doing, you're going to have to go back and watch those other 3 videos. This particular video, I'm going to talk about writing a good children's book by using your life experiences. So I want to talk about kind of the catalyst. I already talked about like how I came up with the idea in the video number 2, but I want to delve into that a little bit more and go into the writing, and then also show you some artwork from the book that I've been working on more towards the end of this video. So I'm going to dive right in, and basically so how I came up with the idea for this story, or what kind of gave me the idea, was that hot tub conversation that I had with a sales rep for one of the major paddle manufacturers. His name is Paul. And so that kind of got me started. But then when I started, that was the idea of actually writing a story. When I actually had to sit down and put pen to paper, so to speak, I had to think like, well, okay, now how do I write this story? What is it going to be about? I mean, I'm going to make a children's book about pickleball. And if you don't know what pickleball is, I'm going to show you. A lot of people have never heard of it before, but it is actually one of the fastest growing sports in the world. This was a still image from Comic Relief where they had celebrities playing, and it was kind of silly. But it is growing at an alarming rate. They say it's growing 20% a year, and that's compounding. So I thought, well, what do I know? I mean, I've been playing this game. When my wife and I, Lily, when we came down here to Arizona, we started playing tennis first in the community that we were living in. And then as the summer drug on or started and people left, we didn't have enough people to play with. And there was this thing called pickleball. I had played a little bit before, just messing around. She had never played, and so we were like, well, maybe we switch over and start playing pickleball. Anyway, we went down to the courts, and well, we got a couple of paddles, and then we thought we would kind of slink into a back empty court. There were people down there playing, and we were like, let's just not make any waves, because we really don't know what we're doing. We want to hit the ball and get a feel for it. And right away, people were like, put your paddles up. Who are you? Oh, okay, you're here. Put your paddles in line to play next. And we were like, just auditing. Like, we don't really know what we're doing, and we just want to kind of go in the back. And they're like, no, put your paddles up. And then in the course of playing with them, they taught us how to play and stuff. But they said, now when the season starts here in the winter and people start coming back, it's going to get really crowded down here. This is where the better people play. You'll probably want to go over to these other courts and play over there, because that's where all the newbies and the beginners play, and you'll probably be more comfortable over there. And so in other words, we had experience playing this. And, if this guy, Paul, had suggested that I write a book about pickleball and I had never played, there's no way that I could write a good story, let alone a convincing story, where the people that play pickleball would be able to relate to it. So, it'd be like me trying to write a story about ballet dancing. I don't know anything about it. Like, what would it be like? What would be the trials and the struggles of someone learning how to play ballet? No clue. I wouldn't know the first thing. I could try to fake it. The shoes were too tight. I have no idea what I would even write as a story. What would be a story? And so it just wouldn't do well. People wouldn't relate with it, and it would be awkward. And that's kind of an example of why I'm, in this video, I'm saying you need to write from your life experiences, because you have feelings that will come through in your story. So the next thing that I did was I actually thought, this is a sports story. And what do all sports stories have in common? They pretty much go through the hero's journey, the underdog. They almost always take that route, right? So like, it wouldn't be interesting if if it was like, the kid on the football team or on the baseball team or the gal on the soccer team or whatever, was the best in her class or in her league, on her team, and then she moved to the next team in high school and was the best there, and then she went to college and made the college team and she was the best there, and then she went pro, and then that's the end. Like, there's no struggle there, right? So in the hero's journey, it's why do we as humans want to watch basically the same story over and over again? And it's because it's a story about us. It's a story about life and the struggles, and we can all relate to it because we've all gone through certain aspects of it, if not all aspects of it, in different ways. Anything that you have tried to get good at and struggled at and had trials in, anytime you've had to deal with peer groups, you've had some if not all of these things happen to you, right? And so in the hero's journey, one of the neatest things to me is to if you place this basically like a story arc template over different movies that you've seen, like you take Lord of the Rings, and you can think about certain points in the movie where these things occur. So you have like Frodo, who gets called by Gandalf to take the ring, right? Like, look, I need you to take this ring. And he refuses it, right? He doesn't want it. And that's exactly why he's qualified to take the ring, is because anybody who would want it is going to be corrupted by it. And he didn't want it. Also, he's a hobbit. And then, that's that. And these things can happen at different times. They don't all have to happen in sequential order here. And not all of them have to happen. But do you remember the part of the movie where Tolkien actually wrote crossing the threshold in? Think about it. When did Frodo cross the threshold? And Tolkien actually wrote it into the story. And Frodo says, if you haven't already thought of it, he says, if I take one step further, and I think they were in the cornfield, I will have gone further from home than I've ever been before. One step further. So he actually takes that step, and Tolkien wrote it in there. So this story plays out in just about every movie. One of the more recent movies that I saw that used this story arc was American Underdog, the Kurt Warner story. If you haven't seen that, it's an amazing movie. The funny thing about really good hero journey movies is the backdrop doesn't really matter. If it's written well, if the characters are believable, if you can relate to the characters, if you care about the characters, then the backdrop of the sport or the event or whatever doesn't matter as much as the how much you care and fall in love with the characters and the struggle that they're going through, because that's what we relate to. So I'm sitting here thinking about Pickleball and going, well, it's another sports story. It could follow the hero's journey, which is basically the underdog story too, right? It's we don't care about that character who is good at everything. We care about the character who isn't good about everything. So I thought to myself, my wife and I were underdogs when we first started playing this sport. We've been playing now for a year and a half, and we're getting pretty good. I used to play racquetball competitively, so for 35 years I played racquetball, so I picked it up a little easier, I think, just having hand-eye coordination. But we went through a lot of the feelings that I wrote into the characters in this story, who, the main character in particular, isn't good enough and feels like he doesn't belong, and is actually told that by some of the other characters. And that's another thing that I wrote in there, is I wanted the viewers, the children who are going to either read this story or whose parents are going to read it to them, to feel something that they've felt before. Okay, so everyone has been last picked on a team. Everyone's been overlooked to be picked at all. And all of us have been told we're not good enough to do the thing that we want to do, right? From an early age. That is something that everyone's felt. So I really wanted to write that into the story and to have the main character kind of go through that. In a future video, I'll end up sharing some of that artwork because I'll be done with it then. Some of the artwork of those scenes of where the main character is told you're just not good enough, and kind of how I wrote that and how those the pictures rely on the text and vice versa. I'll go through that in another video. But so anyway, so I'm thinking, okay, so this character needs to basically follow this story arc, and needs to go through the there's not anything supernatural going on in this story because it's more of a based in the real world. But you could have that, but there's definitely a mentor involved in this story, and the mentor helps the underdog learn and grow and become worthy to battle later on and ultimately find success, right? What a big surprise there. It's funny because we go through these stories again and again, and we want to see the underdog win. And we kind of know we're going to see that, right? I mean, like, it wouldn't be a very good story and no one would really relate to it if there's all this work put in and then the last scene is just a big failure and that's it in the end, and it's doom and gloom. And so it's hard to make a story like that work without having another kind of reward. But that's really what I did. Was I took a lot of the feelings that I had from as a child, as first starting to play racquetball where I didn't belong. I remember going down to the racquetball courts and playing on a challenge court, and that's where you basically put your paddle up to be next, or you're in that case a racket, and you go on and you challenge the last person that won. Well, when I first started playing racquetball, I loved the game so much. I related. I don't know, it just felt like, where have you been all my life? The first time I played, that I just wanted someone to play with. I'll just tell the story really quick. I was in college, going to BYU, and a bunch of friends were like, "Hey, we're going to go play racquetball," which I'd never even heard of before, never saw it or anything. We're going to go down and play racquetball. Do you want to come? So I went. We played. I'm loving it. I'm like, this is amazing. I can't believe I've never played this before. And then the guys are like, okay, so the next thing we're going to go do is some other activity. I'm like, what about racquetball? Let's go back and do that. I'm like, we did that already. And so we were, we're new at school and we're just like living life and discovering things. And I'm like, I'm going back for racquetball. So I go back and I put my racket up to play because there was no one to play with except on the challenge court. And they were amazing. And I sheepishly go in there, and it's obvious that I don't belong. And the guy's just like, the guy that was in there just destroyed me. I mean, I probably couldn't even hardly hit any of the balls. And he was like, look, let me give you a few pointers and then you can go off in the court by yourself and practice. And so I did. But it was those feelings of not belonging, not knowing what I was doing, kind of getting handed my hat and sent on my way. That was written into this story. So the main message of this video is to find something that you can write about, that you can draw these emotional experiences from your own life. If you can't write that into a story, you're just going to have a really hard time selling it to people and getting them to really believe in your story. And so let me show you. Let me finish by showing you some of the artwork in the story. So this piece right here, I wanted to do an establishing shot. We call that, like when think about in the beginning of a movie when you maybe the credits are still rolling, and you're kind of zooming into a town or into some sort of environment or into a room or into a house or something. It kind of establishes where the story is taking place. So they call it an establishing shot. And I didn't have to do this, but I thought this would be great for the title page or for one of the early pages in the book. But more importantly, I knew that from writing the story, I was going to have to show two of the characters' houses. So these two houses right here, this one and this one right here, are the two main environments where the story takes place, or a big part of where the story takes place. And so I needed specific locations that would look the same from different angles, or maybe not from different angles, but from different zooms. And this is also an economy of effort thing. Like, why reinvent the wheel? Why? Let me go back up just for a second and say, not from different angles specifically, but different crops. In in that way, I won't have to. I can do less drawing, and it'll still look really accurate. And so, what I did was I took two different croppings out of this scene, and so we have this image, which is, you can see, I'll go back, and you can see this house right here with the dog house. And because I zoomed in, I had to fix things, so I had to do another detail pass over it, and then there's one more scene. And by the way, really quick, if you don't know how to draw and you want to draw better, I do have an online illustration school called svslearn.com. It's a subscription. It's $25 a month, and you can get all the classes there that you will need to do illustrations like this. And so anyway, check that out. It's svslearn.com. But going back to this, you can see the other house is this one here with the grill right there. So we see a part of that house, and we see a couple of the characters in here. I'll talk more about the characters in another video, and more about the story, what's actually happening. But basically, this is a great way. And what I'll do is I'll fade out this illustration. So I'll zoom in, and I'll fade it out on the edges, and then I'll put my like they call it front matter in a book, and it's like all the copyright information, the information on where it's printed, and the technique that was used to illustrate it, just all that blurby stuff in the beginning. And I'll just kind of have this scene. There won't be any text on this scene. We won't start the story yet, but we are kind of starting the story, in that there's an establishing shot, and you're kind of getting a flavor for where this story is taking place, which I think is really important, because in a children's book, this is going to be a standard 32-page book. You only have 32 pages to tell this story. And that's like when I go back to the story arc, I can't get through all of this stuff. There's just not time in a 32-page book, but you can hit the major stuff, and you can write a story that is compelling and that relates to people, or that people relate to. And so anyway, that's how I started to write the story on this book. Check in with me next time. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to share on the next video, but just as an update to you guys, if you found this series later on, I am going to be sharing all of just everything in creating and marketing this children's book. Again, my challenge to myself is to actually earn more money on this book, on this self-published book, than I do with my major publishers. And one of the reasons, aside from the fact that I'd want to make more money in the long run, but I want to see if I basically want to prove the concept that you can self-publish and be competitive. And with the tools that we have today, I think that that's definitely possible. So I'll be sharing all the expenses related to this project, and all the profits, and come up with some net values, and just kind of share all that with you. If it flops, then you'll get to see that too. So stay tuned to this series. And again, I'm just going to be making update videos from time to time, usually trying to upload once a week. And I missed last week because of the holidays, but because of Thanksgiving. But yeah, so once a week I'll be trying to really get an update on where things are going. And thanks for watching, and hope to see you on the next one.